Pregnant wife finds her millionaire husband with Mistress at a high-end restaurant and explodes. Ava Hastings never imagined her fairy tale romance would unravel so explosively. Pregnant and glowing, she had walked into Le Bernardine in New York City, hoping to surprise her billionaire husband, Alexander Hastings, with wonderful news she believed would cement their future together. Instead, she found him laughing intimately with the mysterious, impossibly beautiful Lucinda. Everything Ava believed in her marriage, her sense of security, her dreams for their child, came crashing down at that elegantly adorned table. What followed was a night of tears, anger, and shocking revelations. Little did she know, fate was about to unveil even more devastating secrets. Ava Delacroix Hastings had grown up in a modest home in suburban Connecticut. Her family wasn't poor, but frugality was a necessity. She learned early on that nothing in life was handed to you on a silver platter. Her father was a school teacher who worked long hours and weekends grading papers, and her mother juggled a small floral shop while raising 4 children. It was a busy, loving household, but one where money was tight. Ava's parents had always impressed upon her the value of education and hard work. And so, from a young age, Ava immersed herself in her studies. She excelled academically, entering her teenage years with the kind of work ethic that left teachers awestruck. By the time she was accepted into a prestigious Ivy League university, everyone was certain she was destined for success. Yet she was unprepared for how drastically her life would change the moment she laid eyes on Alexander Hastings. Alexander seemed to fill every room he entered. Tall, confident, with sharply defined features, he exuded a magnetism that demanded attention. He was the sole heir to the Hastings fortune, an empire built on centuries-old shipping routes and diversified into real estate, tech startups, and a global network of luxury hotels. Most of his classmates whispered about his wealth, sometimes in awe, other times with envy or contempt, but Ava barely heard any of that at first. The only thing she remembered from their very first conversation was how Alexander made her feel as though she were the single most important person in the world. They met on a chilly autumn afternoon at a charity mixer hosted by the university's business club. Ava had been there by chance, volunteering to help organize the event. Alexander, then a junior, with big dreams of further expanding his family's legacy, had come to explore sponsorship opportunities. Ava was pinned between 2 large vases of flowers, struggling to adjust a heavy banner, when she heard a warm, confident voice behind her. "Need a hand?" She turned, heart pounding, and saw him. In that moment, he wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't an heir with unimaginable privileges. He was just a guy offering a helping hand, a charismatic stranger who took her breath away. They laughed over the tediousness of preparing for a big event. He teased her about how she expertly maneuvered around financial donors, persuading them to contribute. She teased him about how he appeared so calm, as if hosting lavish events was second nature. There was a spark. By the end of the night, he had asked if he could walk her home, and she had hesitated only a second before nodding yes. Over the next few years, their courtship felt like a story plucked straight from a romance novel. They studied together at the library's hidden corners, passed notes in the middle of tedious lectures, and shared holiday breaks at each other's family homes. Ava's parents were initially apprehensive about how different their worlds were. Could their sensible, down-to-earth daughter truly find her place in the opulence that surrounded Alexander? But from the very start, Alexander was gracious and humble. He appeared eager to prove that his affluence didn't define him. Eventually, after graduating, Alexander asked Ava to move in with him first into a penthouse overlooking the city, then into his family's summer villa for the holidays. Though it took time for her to adjust to the shimmering chandeliers, the personal staff, and the dinners at 5-star restaurants, Ava remained herself, genuine, kind, and unpretentious. She believed in him, trusted him. When he proposed at a small garden party, kneeling in a patch of bright red roses, she said yes through tears of joy. Their engagement was the talk of the social scene. Magazines snapped photos of the pair at galas. Tabloids published gossip about the angelic brunette from modest origins, set to marry America's most eligible billionaire heir. But in their private moments, away from cameras and prying eyes, Ava felt that none of that fanfare mattered. Alexander was the man she loved because he seemed warm, caring, and protective. Little did she know how drastically the tides would turn, how a man once brimming with kindness could transform into a stranger, entangled in secrets that would leave her questioning everything. After their grand wedding, an event so lavish that it took place on a private island, Ava's life entered a dreamlike state. She was no longer Ava Delacroix. She had become Miss S. Alexander Hastings. Suddenly she had an entire staff at her disposal. She accompanied Alexander to the most glamorous events: New York Fashion Week, philanthropic soirees in London, black tie fundraisers in Dubai, and even quiet weekend getaways at a small chateau in the French countryside. During those early days, Alexander was sweeter than honey. He made sure to treat Ava with gentle affection and unwavering support. Her transition into Hastings' life was made simpler by his reassurances. "You belong here," he'd whisper whenever she grew overwhelmed at the scale of their wealth or the constant demands of high society. "You're my wife, and that's the only thing that matters." Yet cracks began to form. After the honeymoon phase, Alexander became consumed by the responsibilities of Hastings Corporation. Intense boardroom battles and constant travel demanded more and more of his time. Conferences in Tokyo, negotiations in Berlin, expansions in Brazil, it seemed the entire planet demanded Alexander's presence. At first, Ava accepted it. She understood that with such wealth came immense responsibilities. She tried to be supportive and proud, but the late-night phone calls grew longer and more secretive. Alexander would slip into an adjacent room, conversation hushed. When asked, he'd brush it off as merely sensitive corporate discussions. His phone was always locked, and he grew agitated at the slightest mention of his business dealings. Increasingly, she heard rumors circulating among the staff. She'd walk into a room and see two maids exchange uneasy glances and fall silent. The butler, once an open book, seemed to weigh every word as though fearful of revealing something he shouldn't. Ava tried to push aside the paranoia. She told herself that wealthy people lived complicated lives. Not everything had to be suspicious. And then came the day she found out she was pregnant. The news should have been cause for pure joy, an expansion of their fledgling family. She imagined Alexander picking out baby names and delighting in the glow of impending fatherhood. But when she told him, he stiffened momentarily, letting the news soak in for a few awkward seconds before offering her a dutiful, distracted kiss on the forehead. "That's wonderful, darling," he had murmured, sounding more dazed than elated. She reminded herself that her husband had 1,000 obligations swirling in his mind. Perhaps he needed time to process. She decided she would lavish her love on their unborn child, patiently waiting for Alexander to catch up emotionally. What she didn't anticipate was how distant he would become. The more her belly grew, the more he seemed to vanish behind a curtain of secrecy and exhaustion. She began to see him primarily at night, well past bedtime. Then he'd leave before dawn, offering curt goodbyes. And so, on the fateful evening, she decided to make a grand, romantic gesture, dressing up and surprising him at one of the city's most upscale restaurants. She believed she was doing it to save their marriage. She wanted to reignite the spark that had united them in the first place. Little did she know she would be walking straight into a heartbreak that would shatter her world. Le Bernardin, a legendary Michelin-starred restaurant in Midtown Manhattan, was known for its oceanic ambience and exquisite seafood menu. Reservation waitlists stretched for months. But for a Hastings, access was never a problem. Word had filtered back to Ava through a loyal staff member that Alexander had booked a private table there for an evening meeting. She thought it odd. Alexander had told her he would be working late at the office, but he'd also been prone to last-minute changes, so perhaps he'd neglected to mention the dinner. Ava donned a sleek maternity gown that draped elegantly over her blossoming figure, silver satin that reflected her quiet longing to remind her husband of their bond. She arrived at the restaurant just as twilight descended over the city, casting the glass towers of Manhattan in a purple glow. The hostess recognized Ava and treated her with immediate deference, leading her discreetly toward the private dining area. As she passed the hushed tables filled with power brokers, socialites, and celebrities, a small wave of anxiety fluttered in her chest. She kept telling herself, "He'll be so happy to see me." This is a romantic surprise. She carried a gift bag containing a pair of custom baby shoes embroidered with the initial H. She had envisioned presenting them to him in a tender moment of renewed connection. But the moment Ava turned the corner into the softly lit private room, her world froze. There sat Alexander, dressed in one of his tailored suits that made him appear every bit the young titan of industry he was. And across from him, leaning in intimately, was a woman of striking beauty. She was tall, with flowing dark hair and an aura of confidence, as if she owned every room she stepped into. She wore a crimson dress that clung to her curves, revealing the subtle glint of diamonds at her throat. A playful smile danced on her lips as she touched Alexander's wrist, a gesture so familiar it rattled Ava to the core. Ava stood there, gift bag in hand, breath trapped in her lungs. She watched as her husband and this mysterious woman shared what appeared to be a moment of fond laughter. Alexander's eyes shone with an intensity Ava had not seen in weeks, maybe months. For a heartbeat, she hoped to be mistaken. Perhaps this woman was a colleague or a high-profile client. Surely there must be an explanation. But then the woman leaned closer and placed a lingering kiss on Alexander's cheek, trailing her fingertip down his jaw. Ava's blood turned to ice. The hostess discreetly slipped away, recognizing the storm about to erupt. Ava felt a primal surge of emotion, the betrayal, the anger, the heartbreak, and she marched forward, unstoppable in her raw pain. Alexander jolted when he saw her. His eyes widened, and he leaped from his chair as though scalded. "Ava, what are you doing here?" She barely registered her own trembling voice as she demanded, "Who is this?" The other woman regarded Ava with an expression of mild annoyance, as though Ava was the intruder rather than the pregnant wife. She made no effort to cover up the brazen intimacy she shared with Alexander. Her lips curved into a smug smile. The confrontation felt surreal, like a scene from one of those cheap tabloids Ava had once dismissed. She had read stories of wealthy tycoons and their illicit affairs, never dreaming she would be living one. She clutched the gift bag to her chest, fighting the tears that burned behind her eyes. "Lucinda Davenport," the woman said, offering her name as though it were a jewel in her palm, "Alexander's friend." She emphasized the final word in a way that sent a sharp knife into Ava's gut. Ava's vision blurred with shock and fury. She turned to her husband, her once loving husband. "Alexander, what is going on? Who is this woman?" Alexander stammered. She's just a business associate, discussing a new venture." "Don't insult me," Ava lashed out, voice cracking. Is it an affair?" Alexander's lips parted, searching for words, but it was Lucinda who spoke. "Let's not sugarcoat it, darling." He's mine, Ava, at least while he wants to be. In that instant, Ava Hastings felt the entire foundation of her life quake beneath her feet. She was pregnant with his child, fighting to keep their marriage intact, and he stood there, eyes full of guilt, in the presence of a woman brazenly staking a claim on him. Betrayal roared through Ava's veins. Without thinking, she hurled the gift bag at Alexander's chest. She spun on her heel, ignoring her husband's pleas to wait. "We can talk," as she stormed through the hushed dining room, heads turned, hearing her outraged sobs. But she didn't care. She left behind the glimmering chandeliers, the murmured gossip of onlookers, and above all, she left behind the perfect illusions of her marriage. The next few hours blurred together as Ava barreled through the city in a taxi, tears cascading down her cheeks. She found herself dialing her sister's number, the only person she trusted in that soul-shattering moment. When Isobel answered, Ava struggled to speak through her tears. He's with someone else. I caught him, Isobel. I'm pregnant and he's with someone else. Isobel's voice turned fierce. Where are you, Ava? Tell me, I'm coming to get you. They ended up at Isobel's modest apartment in Brooklyn. The place was a far cry from Ava's opulent penthouse, but she felt more at home in her sister's small living room than she had felt in her extravagant world for a long time. Isobel wrapped her in blankets, offered her warm tea, and let Ava sob until her eyes were too swollen to stay open. For days, Ava ignored Alexander's barrage of calls and texts. He wrote frantic messages. "We need to talk. It wasn't what it looked like. Please come home." But she couldn't face him, couldn't bear to hear his voice. She felt rage, sadness, confusion. On the third day, one of Alexander's close friends, Damien, showed up at Isabel's apartment, acting as a mediator. Damien pleaded, "You know Alexander has been under immense stress. People do stupid things. He's sorry, Ava. Just come back and let him explain himself." But the memory of that woman Lucinda, with her smug, triumphant eyes, kept replaying. Ava wanted to dig deeper. She wanted to know who Lucinda was, what hold she had over Alexander. But the betrayal still stung too sharply to approach him calmly. Her mother, hearing of the crisis, insisted that Ava return to the Hastings penthouse just to talk. Torn between fury and a desire for truth, Ava relented. She needed closure answers. So she ventured back into that lavish abode, uncertain if her heart could handle the conversation that awaited her. When she arrived, the sprawling foyer felt colder, haunted by memories of illusions. Alexander was waiting, eyes rimmed with dark circles, his hair disheveled. He stepped toward her tentatively, as though approaching a wounded animal. "Ava, I'm so sorry," he began, voice trembling with remorse. "I messed up. I never meant." She cut him off, struggling to keep her composure. Don't say you never meant it. I need truth. Who is Lucinda Davenport to you?" Alexander exhaled, dropping into an armchair. "She's my mistress," he admitted, his voice strangled with shame. "It started a few months ago. She's helped me secure certain deals. She has connections I needed to expand Hastings Corporation. One thing led to another, and I failed you." Ava's chest ached with betrayal. "You used me, Alex. You let me believe everything was fine, while you," her words cracked with heartbreak. He rose, stepping closer. "No, I love you, Ava. I do. I just got trapped in this complicated arrangement. She's manipulative. She threatened. Threatened what?" Ava spat. "To expose your secrets? You thought so little of me that you'd rather keep an affair hidden than risk scandal? Is that all I am to you? A PR convenience?" He grabbed her hand, desperation written across his face. "You're my wife. It's more than that. There's a contract, a business deal I signed, tied to her father's conglomerate. Backing out would cost billions, maybe even destroy everything my family's built. I was weak, and I took the easy route. I never intended it to go this far. She yanked her hand away. It went far enough that she brags you're hers. Alexander's voice trembled. You're carrying my child. That means everything to me. Then why didn't you stop before it got to this point? She whispered, her voice small but seething. Do you have any idea how humiliated I felt? Finding you like that in public, with the entire city's elite probably whispering about how your pregnant wife is a fool. He swore under his breath, burying his face in his hands. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything, pay anything, to get out of Lucinda's clutches. Please, Ava, give me a chance to fix this. A swirl of conflicting emotions seized her. She wanted to believe him, to cling to the hope that her marriage could be salvaged for the sake of their unborn child. But the memory of Lucinda's sneer gave Ava pause. She suspected Lucinda had bigger ambitions than just a fling, and if Alexander had entangled himself with her father's conglomerate, it might not be so simple. Before she could respond, they heard a feminine voice echo through the foyer. You really think it's that easy, Alex? They turned to find Lucinda herself, standing at the threshold, impeccably dressed, her expression aloof. A hush fell over the room as all illusions of privacy disappeared. Ava's skin prickled, her exhaustion giving way to a fresh wave of anger. Lucinda cast an appraising gaze over Ava's pregnant belly, then shot a cold smile at Alexander. You actually think you can ghost me? End our agreement and walk away? Alexander's face was ashen. Lucinda, why are you here? Lucinda sauntered in as though she owned the penthouse. My father and I have an ironclad contract with you, Alex. You can't just snap your fingers and break it. She turned to Ava with a condescending stare. And you should understand, dear, business is business. If your husband tries to disentangle from us, the fallout will be enormous. Entire divisions of Hastings Corporation could crumble. You can wave goodbye to your precious fortune. Ava clenched her fists. Do you think I care about money when my marriage is on the line? How dare you come here, taunting us both? Lucinda shrugged, unperturbed. I couldn't care less about your marriage, but Alex made promises to me, both financial and personal. If he walks away, I'll make sure the Hastings name is dragged through the mud in court, in the press, anywhere it can hurt. I have connections of my own. Alexander exploded in frustration. Enough! You can't hold me hostage forever. Lucinda's smirk vanished. You've made your choice, I see. You want to salvage your marriage, so you're willing to betray me. She paused, brushing imaginary lint from her skirt. Fine, but I don't play nice once I'm crossed. Remember that. With that ominous warning, she turned and strode out. The sound of the heavy doors slamming behind her echoed through the penthouse, an unsettling reminder of the storm they now faced. Ava's pulse hammered in her ears, a war raging within her. She had come seeking honesty, and she had found a vicious entanglement that endangered not just her marriage, but their entire family legacy. In the ensuing days, Alexander convened urgent board meetings, consulted a team of lawyers, and cancelled all his trips. He frantically tried to disentangle the Hastings Corporation from Lucinda's father's conglomerate, but it was a snarled mess. The contract, hammered out in a rush when Alexander had been desperate for an infusion of capital to expand globally, gave Lucinda's side immense leverage. Untangling the alliance could cost billions, enough to topple the Hastings empire if they weren't cautious. Meanwhile, Lucinda made no secret of her fury. She took to social media, posting cryptic messages that implied an inside knowledge of Hastings Corporation's internal affairs. She was often seen at exclusive clubs with a retinue of influential media figures, feeding stories about Alexander's betrayal. Suddenly, rumors and half-truths circulated about the Hastings brand being plagued by scandal. Stocks fluctuated and partners grew uneasy. Forever, every new rumor felt like another needle piercing her already bleeding heart. She hovered between heartbreak and worry for the future of her unborn child. She oscillated between wanting to run far away from Alexander's complicated life and feeling compelled to stand by him for the sake of their child. He was still the father of the baby she carried. She couldn't simply pretend he no longer existed. Alexander, desperate for answers, pored over legal documents and engaged the most ruthless attorneys in New York to craft a strategy. One evening, he found Ava alone in the penthouse library, sitting on a chaise lounge with a distant expression. He approached, hesitating. "Ava, I know words mean little now, but I want you to know I'm ready to do anything. If you want a divorce, you'll get one. If you need me to sign over half my assets, I will. Just tell me how to make this right." She swallowed hard, studying him. The man she had fallen in love with looked weary, regretful, a shadow of his former confident self. A flicker of old tenderness stirred within her, but the pain was still raw. "It's not about money," she said quietly. "I'm trying to figure out if the man I married even exists anymore." "You cheated on me, Alexander. You slept with another woman, not once but repeatedly. You never told me, even when I announced my pregnancy." He dropped his gaze. "I hate myself for hurting you. I was foolish, but also terrified. I'd invested so much in that business deal. I needed Lucinda's cooperation. It started physically, but I convinced myself it was purely strategic. I see now how twisted that sounds." He lifted his eyes, tears brimming. "Please, I want to fix this. For us, for our child." Her voice caught. "Then prove it. Untangle yourself from that woman, from her father's deals. Show me that you can stand on your own without them, because I can't raise a child in this madness." That night, she slept alone in a guest suite, tears staining the pillow. She heard him pacing the halls until dawn, phone calls flooding in, lawyers re-evaluating contracts, and board members threatening dire consequences if he made a wrong move. All the while, Ava wondered if love could truly survive such betrayal. Lucinda's father was no ordinary businessman. Alastair Davenport was feared in the corporate world for his ruthless tactics. He had built a global conglomerate spanning shipping, pharmaceuticals, and media. His methods were shrouded in secrecy, and rumors swirled that he used intimidation and espionage to gain an edge. Once he set his sights on a target, few escaped unscathed. When Alexander had sought expansion capital, Alastair had smelled opportunity. Forming an alliance with the Hastings name, then embedding his daughter Lucinda to cement the relationship in both boardrooms and bedrooms, had been a master stroke. Now that Alexander wanted out, Alastair was determined to crush the Hastings empire if necessary. Threatening letters started arriving at the Hastings Corporation. Anonymous phone calls warned of massive leaks if Alexander didn't comply. Lucinda posted old photos of her and Alexander on her social media, fueling speculation of a relationship far deeper than a mere fling. Some tabloids even asserted that Lucinda was pregnant with Alexander's child, though Ava had no idea if this was true or a desperate attempt to blow the scandal wide open. As tensions rose, Alexander lost key partners who feared the swirl of negative press. The board demanded he fix the situation swiftly. The Hastings fortune, which had stood the test of centuries, was teetering on the brink. Ava watched from the sidelines, torn between anger and pity. She was still furious at her husband's betrayal. Yet she also couldn't ignore that Lucinda and her father were the real devils in the story, orchestrating a takedown of the family empire. In a surprising twist, Alexander's father, Philip Hastings, emerged from retirement to help. Philip was a man of old-school business acumen, a revered figure who had expanded the family fortune in his heyday. He arrived at the penthouse in a swirl of cologne and authority, greeting Ava politely but with a distance that suggested he was entirely focused on damage control. "I never liked those Davenports," he murmured to Alexander over a glass of brandy late one night. "Alastair is a vulture. I warned you, but you insisted on forging ahead with that alliance." Alexander, exhausted, cradled his head in his hands. "I know, Father. I saw an opportunity and thought I was doing the right thing for the company. I never imagined Lucinda would. Things would get so complicated." Philip eyed Ava in the corner of the room, her pregnancy visible. He lowered his voice. "I expected you, as my son, to have more sense. Now, we must do damage control. We'll sever ties quietly, or if that fails, we'll wage a public war. We can't let Alastair Davenport destroy us." Ava left them to their talks, feeling a swirl of emotion. On one hand, she was relieved to see the Hastings patriarch stepping in to protect what was his. On the other, she felt used, overshadowed by the demands of business and legacy. Where was the tenderness she had expected from her husband when learning of her pregnancy? A few days later, Ava received a call from an unknown number. She answered, half expecting another reporter fishing for scandalous details. Instead, Lucinda's voice purred on the line. "Sweet Ava," Lucinda greeted mockingly, "I'm sure you're eager to see your husband free of me, right?" Ava's heart pounded. "If this is about money, you have plenty. Why keep tormenting him and me?" Lucinda let out a low laugh. "You think I just want money? No, dear, I'm after bigger game. Alexander, power. You see, men like him don't break so easily. The challenge, the thrill, that's what I crave. But if you want me gone, meet me tomorrow, alone. Let's see if you have what it takes to save your precious marriage." She gave Ava a location, a lavish, private club in Manhattan, then hung up. Ava's hands shook. She debated telling Alexander or his father, but something about Lucinda's tone suggested she wouldn't show if more people were involved. Perhaps this was Ava's chance to end the nightmare once and for all. She resolved to go, determined to protect her unborn child from the swirling chaos. At the club, Lucinda awaited her in a discreet corner booth. Everything about Lucinda exuded poise and wealth, her diamonds, her immaculate dress, the practiced smile of a woman who had never taken no for an answer. Ava sat across from her, clasping her trembling hands together. "What do you want?" Lucinda leaned forward, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "It's simple. Walk away from Alexander. Divorce him. Vanish from his life. If you do that, I'll let him out of the contract with minimal consequences. I'll ensure the Hastings name remains intact, and I'll slip quietly into the background." Ava's jaw tightened. "And if I refuse?" Lucinda's expression darkened. "Then I'll keep making waves. My father will escalate. The Hastings empire will suffer irreparable damage. Your child will inherit nothing but a father drowning in debt and scandal. Is that what you want?" Ava's mind reeled. She considered the child growing inside her, the future that child would need. She remembered her own modest upbringing, the intangible security she had hoped to provide for her children by marrying Alexander. And now, Lucinda threatened to strip them of everything. But Ava wasn't naive. "Do you really love him, or do you just want to control him?" she demanded. Lucinda gave a hard smile. "Love doesn't matter. I enjoy power. The Hastings brand, the wealth, the prestige. Alexander was delicious fun. But if it's too complicated, I'm happy to walk away provided I don't lose face or money. The choice is yours, dear." Ava stared at her adversary, feeling a sick pit in her stomach. The ultimatum was monstrous. If she chose to stay with Alexander, the Davenports would unleash a wave of destruction upon them. If she left, she might save the empire but shatter her family. And who was to say Lucinda would keep her promise? She remembered the day she married Alexander, the vow of for better or for worse. Could she truly betray that vow? Could she walk away from the father of her child, no matter how flawed? In that moment, she made a silent vow. I won't let you win so easily. Quietly, Ava stood. I won't be blackmailed. Alexander and I will decide what happens to our marriage, not you. She turned on her heel, ignoring Lucinda's warning hiss. Then you'll regret it. Ava returned home, her thoughts churning like a raging sea. She found Alexander in the study, flipping through pages of financial documents. He looked up, eyes dull with fatigue. You look shaken, he said, rising to her side. What happened? She recounted Lucinda's ultimatum. Alexander's face hardened with anger. She's desperate. She knows her father's legal hold is slipping. Is it really slipping? Ava asked, uncertain. He pursed his lips. We found a loophole in the contract, something about a conflict of interest that wasn't fully disclosed. If proven, it could invalidate parts of the agreement. It's not a guarantee, but it's hope. Ava exhaled, tension easing. So this isn't hopeless. Alexander shook his head. Not yet, but it might still escalate into a legal war. And if we lose... He didn't finish the sentence, but she grasped the gravity. She sank into an armchair, pressing a hand to her belly. I won't walk away. But if we're going to fight this, I need you to fight for us too, not just for the company, but for our marriage. No more secrets. He knelt in front of her, placing his hands over hers. I swear, no more secrets, Ava. I was foolish, letting lust and greed cloud my judgment. I've lost your trust, and I'll do everything to earn it back. That night, for the first time since the confrontation at Le Bernardin, Ava let herself lean into his arms. They didn't talk about the past. The wounds were still fresh, but they held each other, anchored by the child she carried, and the faint hope that they could emerge from this crisis stronger. Word reached them that Alastair Davenport was hosting an extravagant charity gala at the Plaza Hotel, a star-studded affair where the city's elite would mingle. Rumours hinted he planned to unveil damning information against the Hastings family. The event was an ostensible fundraiser for a medical research initiative, but behind the glitz, everyone knew it was a battleground for corporate power. Despite the risk, Alexander insisted on attending. If we show up, hold our heads high, we might undermine his narrative. Let's not hide. Ava, her pregnancy, now visibly advanced, hesitated. But if she stayed away, that could be twisted as a sign of weakness or shame. She refused to give Lucinda such satisfaction. So, on the night of the gala, they arrived as a united front. The plaza's grand ballroom glittered with chandeliers and polished floors. Classical music floated through the air. Amid the sea of tuxedos and designer gowns, Alastair Davenport presided over the festivities like a king greeting subjects. Lucinda hovered nearby, resplendent in a gown of shimmering black, her eyes scanning the crowd for Alexander and Ava. A hush fell as the Hastings couple entered. Whispers rippled, some pitying, some scornful, some curious. Alastair greeted them with a chillingly polite smile. Alexander, I'm pleased you made it. And the lovely Ava, congratulations on the pregnancy. The air around them crackled with tension. Ava forced a gracious smile. Thank you. We're delighted. As the night wore on, talk turned to donations, expansions, and hush-hush business deals. Ava and Alexander held their composure, mixing with prominent figures to reaffirm that the Hastings family remained strong. Every now and then, Ava caught Lucinda's gaze, lingering on them with vengeful intensity. Later in the evening, Alastair requested everyone's attention. He stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me in support of medical research. But first, a special announcement. We have new philanthropic endeavors that reflect the spirit of collaboration among our city's greatest families. Tonight, I wish to highlight my daughter's tireless efforts." He beckoned Lucinda, who glided onto the stage. Ava's pulse quickened, anticipating a blow. She could feel Alexander tense beside her. Lucinda smiled coyly at the crowd. "It's no secret that my father's conglomerate and Hastings Corporation have engaged in a remarkable partnership. Our two families have forged a bond that extends beyond business," she said, her eyes flicking to Alexander. "And in such alliances, honesty and integrity are paramount. Unfortunately, certain actions have jeopardized that integrity." Murmurs spread across the ballroom. Cameras flashed. Ava gripped Alexander's hand. He whispered under his breath. "Stay strong," Lucinda continued. "But I want you all to know that Davenport Industries stands by its principles. We shall not be swayed by unscrupulous dealings or betrayal. We remain open to forging alliances with those who keep their word." Her tone was mocking, the subtext clear. The crowd stirred, uncertain whether a dramatic reveal was coming. Lucinda locked her eyes on Ava. "To any who would question our resolve, you may soon learn how we deal with those who break promises." Then, as if concluding a benign speech, she stepped back, applause echoing half-heartedly through the room. Alastair gave them a tight-lipped smile and ushered everyone to continue enjoying the festivities. But the tension remained, like a tangible force. Ava and Alexander exchanged grim looks. This was only the beginning of whatever storm Lucinda planned to unleash. A few days later, Alexander's attorneys discovered a new problem. A series of suspicious financial transactions had surfaced, implicating Hastings Corporation in bribery. Screenshots of emails, bank statements, and hush-hush memos had been leaked to investigative journalists. The media latched onto the story, painting Alexander as a corrupt billionaire paying off officials to secure prime real estate deals. The scandal escalated swiftly, overshadowing every philanthropic or legitimate success the Hastings name had built. Ava read the headlines, her stomach twisting. She knew her husband. Despite his transgression with Lucinda, she trusted that he wasn't the type to bribe politicians. But the evidence seemed convincing. It had all the hallmarks of a meticulously orchestrated frame job. Sure enough, their lawyers confirmed the documents were forged, but forging them that skillfully required deep infiltration. In hushed conversations, Alexander, Philip Hastings and Ava acknowledged the truth. Alastair Davenport was behind this, and he had used Lucinda's access to manipulate internal records. If Hastings Corporation couldn't disprove the allegations, lawsuits and criminal investigations might follow. While the crisis engulfed them, Ava's health took a hit. The stress of constant legal battles, media harassment, and heartbreak weighed on her. One afternoon, she fainted in the hallway. The family doctor warned that she needed rest and emotional stability, or she risked complications with the pregnancy. Alexander's eyes brimmed with tears when the doctor left. He knelt at Ava's bedside, clutching her hand. "I hate that I've put you through this. Hate that our child is suffering before even being born. I promise, Ava, I'll fix it." She gave him a tired nod. "Take the time you need, but please, end this nightmare." Alexander and Philip spent hours locked in the study. Private investigators were called. Tech experts analyzed the forged emails and money trails. Slowly, they unraveled the dirty tricks. The Davenports had orchestrated a cunning operation, but they'd left subtle digital footprints pointing to a remote server linked to their company. Armed with this evidence, Alexander and Philip prepared a counterattack. They compiled a dossier on Alastair's history of intimidation, shell companies, and questionable dealings. Even questionable philanthropic funds that never reached their intended recipients. They discovered that a portion of the Davenport fortune had been funneled illegally, leaving them vulnerable to federal scrutiny. Next, They found the contract clause that Alastair had hidden one that invalidated the partnership if criminal activity was uncovered on his side. It was a small but potent clause, and if used properly, it would completely void the financial arrangement between Davenport Industries and Hastings Corporation. While the father and son hammered out the final details, Ava received a call from Lucinda. The mistress's voice was shrill with anger. "You're behind this, aren't you? Digging into my father's affairs, rummaging through our files. You think you can beat us?" Ava took a steadying breath. "You should be more worried about your own transgressions, Lucinda. You can't bully us forever." Lucinda let out an unhinged laugh. "You're an idiot if you think you'll come out unscathed. If you go public with your so-called evidence, we'll bury you. I still have personal material on Alexander, photos, messages. Your precious husband might be a saint to you now, but the world will see his appetites." Ava's gut twisted, but she refused to back down. "We're prepared to face that, if we must, because at least we'll be free of you." She ended the call with a trembling hand, adrenaline coursing through her. She had no idea what personal materials Lucinda was referring to, but she suspected it could further sully Alexander's name. Still, they had gone too far to stop now. The next step was a do-or-die move. Alexander arranged a press conference at a swank downtown hotel. Reporters swarmed, eager for the next twist in the Hastings-Davenport saga. The rumor mills were abuzz with speculation that Alexander would address the bribery allegations head-on or possibly announce his resignation. Ava sat in the front row, supportive but anxious, her hand resting protectively over her pregnant belly. Philip Hastings flanked Alexander on the stage, and their legal counsel stood ready with thick binders of evidence. Cameras flashed incessantly as Alexander approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press," he began, voice resonating through the room. "In recent weeks, Hastings Corporation has faced serious accusations of bribery and unethical business practices. We have a sacred duty to address these claims and defend our name." He paused, scanning the crowd. "For centuries, the Hastings family has maintained a reputation of integrity. We admit we have made errors in judgment, forging alliances without proper due diligence. However, the bribery allegations presented are entirely false. We have conclusive evidence that proves these documents were fabricated by individuals seeking to undermine our family and company." Reporters murmured and scribbled notes. Alexander gestured to his legal counsel, who held aloft the dossier. "We are releasing a full report detailing how these forgeries were orchestrated. Our investigators uncovered the real source, a remote server owned and operated by Davenport Industries." Gasps echoed. A forest of cameras clicked and whirred. Alexander continued, "Furthermore, we discovered substantial evidence of illicit practices by Davenport Industries, some of which may be criminal in nature. We will provide this evidence to the appropriate authorities. In light of these findings, our legal counsel has declared the partnership contract between Hastings Corporation and Davenport Industries to be null and void." Philip Hastings stepped forward. Effective immediately, Hastings Corporation is severing all ties with the Davenport conglomerate. We stand prepared to face any further legal challenges, but we will not be threatened or extorted. A clamor of voices erupted as reporters shouted questions. "Did you knowingly engage in these illegal partnerships? Is Lucinda Davenport blackmailing you? How is your marriage, Mr. Hastings?" The queries merged into a cacophony. Alexander held up a hand for silence. "As for personal matters, I deeply regret any actions that have brought pain to my family. I ask that you respect our privacy moving forward, especially considering my wife's pregnancy." He offered a slight bow of his head. "Thank you all for coming." Pandemonium ensued. The press was rabid for more details, but Alexander, Philip, and the legal team swiftly exited. Ava followed, heart pounding with a mix of dread and relief. She knew they hadn't heard the last from the Davenports, but at least the Hastings family had gone on the offensive. In the days that followed, the tide turned. Federal investigations into Davenport Industries commenced. Alastair Davenport released a statement denying wrongdoing, claiming Hastings Corporation was on a smear campaign. But behind the scenes, the weight of the discovered evidence had them scrambling to cover their tracks. Lucinda, however, wasn't done. She leaked photos of her and Alexander in intimate settings, grainy images from the penthouse, presumably captured on hidden cameras. The tabloids had a field day. They painted Alexander as a philanderer and cast Ava as a pitiful pregnant woman. The coverage stung. Ava felt humiliated all over again, but Alexander apologized over and over, telling her that old mistakes were surfacing like ghosts. Despite the scandalous images, the public mood shifted. With the bigger bribery fiasco clearing up in Hastings' favor and revelations about Davenport's wrongdoing gaining traction, many saw Lucinda's leaks as desperate attempts at retaliation. A swirl of sympathy emerged for Ava, the pregnant wife standing by her husband in a malicious storm. Amid these controversies, Ava found support from her sister Isabel and a few loyal friends. They reminded her she had the power to choose her next steps. She kept her distance from Alexander physically, but recognized he was doing everything in his power to rectify his mistakes. A turning point arrived when Lucinda, cornered by the growing investigations into her father's illegal dealings, tried to blackmail Alexander one last time. She threatened to spill all in a television interview unless he publicly retracted his claims against her and her father. This time, Alexander refused her demands. The interview happened, replete with Lucinda's salacious allegations about his character, but it seemed the public had grown weary of her theatrics. The once feared mistress, the cunning orchestrator of the affair, found her credibility undermined. She came off as bitter, spurned, and untrustworthy. Soon after, Davenport Industries faced formal charges from federal authorities, and Alastair was arrested for financial crimes and obstruction of justice. In the chaos, Lucinda found herself sidelined, powerless to stop the avalanche of karma hitting her family. Overnight, her father's empire crumbled, their assets frozen, their stock plummeting. With Alastair in custody and the conglomerate in ruins, Lucinda vanished from high society. She left desperate messages for Alexander, claiming she was pregnant too, that she had no money, that her father's accounts were seized. Alexander, uncertain if her claim was real or another lie, informed his legal team. They requested proof of her pregnancy, but Lucinda never provided any, and the matter faded into the background of her father's ongoing criminal trials. The Hastings stock rebounded. Key partners returned, emboldened by the demise of the Davenport threat. Public sympathy leaned in favor of the Hastings name. Alexander attended philanthropic events, acknowledging his personal failings and reasserting the company's commitment to integrity. It was a humbling chapter for him, yet also a transformative one. As for Ava, she found some closure in the knowledge that Lucinda's malicious machinations had backfired so spectacularly. The mistress had soared high in her illusions of power, only to fall when real accountability arrived. The same thirst for control that drove Lucinda to tear down others ended up tearing down her own family. Hard karma, indeed. In the last month of her pregnancy, Ava retreated to her parents' home in Connecticut, choosing the comfort of familiar surroundings. Alexander, with the urgent fires of scandal mostly extinguished, took the time to reflect on what he truly valued. He visited Ava there regularly, bringing groceries, flowers, small tokens of affection. He asked her on quiet walks along the neighborhood street where they used to stroll as newlyweds. Sometimes they spoke of the future, sometimes they just walked in silence, Bit by bit, the wall of anger and hurt between them eroded. One balmy afternoon, AVA's water broke unexpectedly. In a flurry, Alexander rushed her to the hospital. Hours of labor gave way to the wail of a baby boy entering the world. Seeing Alexander cradle their newborn son, tears of wonder in his eyes, Ava felt a surging wave of love. Here was the man she had chosen, flawed yet determined to atone for his mistakes. The baby, named Henry, became a testament to their resilience. They stayed in Connecticut for a while after the birth, enveloped by family and well-wishers. Alexander took a paternity leave from the corporation, a break he once would have deemed impossible to focus on his wife and child. He let his hair grow, wore casual clothes, changed diapers, woke in the middle of the night to rock Henry back to sleep. Ava watched him, grateful and still cautious, her heart healing with every small act of devotion he showed. In quiet moments, they addressed the elephant in the room, Alexander's affair. Therapy sessions, frank conversations, tears. Ava insisted that trust must be earned day by day. Alexander acknowledged that no amount of wealth could buy her forgiveness. He apologized not just for the betrayal, but for letting greed overshadow love. As the months passed, a new normal emerged. Hastings Corporation stabilized under Philip's watchful guidance. Alexander returned to helm the company, grounded by the humility of his experiences. Where once he had soared on ego and ambition, he now led with consideration and caution. Ava, for her part, pursued charitable work focusing on maternal health programs. She utilized the Hastings name to raise funds for prenatal care initiatives. She felt compelled to use her position for good, a purpose that made her feel stronger and more independent. She was no longer just the pregnant wife or the scorned spouse. She had evolved into a mother and an advocate with her own dreams. Lucinda's name rarely came up anymore. Rumor had it she fled the country or was lying low under mounting legal threats. Sometimes, in the darkest hours, Ava thought of her and felt a confusing mix of pity and anger. But mostly, she let it go. She needed no further vengeance. The cosmos had delivered its own retribution. On a sunny day when Henry was just shy of 6 months old, Alexander arranged a small family gathering at the Hastings estate in upstate New York. Guests included close friends, loyal employees, and, of course, AVA's family. Everyone was there to celebrate the naming ceremony for baby Henry. Under a massive oak tree that had stood for over a century, they placed a time capsule containing small mementos, a symbol of hope for the future. After the ceremony, Alexander asked Ava to meet him by the estate's rose garden, a place reminiscent of the night he proposed. There, amidst blooming red roses, he handed her an envelope. "What's this?" she asked gently, balancing Henry on her hip. He exhaled. "Divorce papers, if you want them. Signed. I won't contest anything. You can keep the penthouse. Name your alimony. I'll never abandon Henry financially, of course, but I'll also give you full custody if that's what you prefer." Her eyes misted. She glanced down at the papers, the ultimate gesture of penance. She remembered the heartbreak, the betrayal, the humiliating nights and tearful days. But she also thought of the man he was now, a father who had fought tooth and nail to save his family, who had humbled himself to right a grievous wrong. She let the papers drop to the soft grass. "I don't want a divorce, Alexander. I want a real marriage. I want honesty, respect, love. If you can give me that, I'm willing to try again." He nodded, eyes brimming with relief. "I can. I will." They embraced, baby Henry squirming between them, the fragrance of roses surrounding them in a promise of new beginnings. For Ava, there were no illusions of a perfect world. She understood that trust, once broken, wouldn't be restored overnight. They had a long path ahead, one that required daily effort. but she chose to walk it, fueled by a belief that people could grow and that second chances, while not guaranteed, were sometimes worth the risk. In the months and years that followed, the Hastings family thrived. Ava and Alexander communicated openly, sometimes painfully, but always honestly. Therapy remained a constant, a safe space for them to confront lingering scars. With each passing milestone, Henry's first steps, his first words, the memory of betrayal, receded further into the background. The media eventually moved on to fresh scandals and new names. Occasionally, tabloids dredged up old rumors, but they found no fresh fuel. Lucinda, nowhere to be found, remained a cautionary footnote in the annals of high society drama, a symbol of what happens when greed and ambition outpace moral restraint. Hastings Corporation rebuilt its prestige, forming new, ethically sound alliances, learning from past errors. Alexander, guided by humility, proved a different kind of leader, one who valued integrity over quick profit. Ava expanded her maternal health initiative, traveling around the country to speak on the importance of prenatal care, telling her own story of resilience when necessary. Ultimately, Ava learned that discovering a mistress at a high-end restaurant was not the end of her story, it was the end of her naivety, but also the beginning of a deeper understanding of love, loyalty, and personal strength. She chose not to remain a victim. Instead, she grew into a woman who forgave but did not forget, who demanded respect and honesty, and who built a stronger bond with the man who had once shattered her heart. Karma had dealt its mighty blow, leaving the cunning mistress and her crooked father to reap the whirlwind. They had sown. For Ava and Alexander, what endured was the love that weathered tragedy, shaped by hard truths, yet blossoming anew, much like the roses in that garden where they had taken their final vow of reconciliation. Thank you for joining us on this emotional roller coaster of betrayal, heartbreak, and redemption. Ava Hastings' story reminds us that love isn't just about shared vows, it's about fighting through the darkest storms. Life hurls at us. Caught in a devastating scandal, Ava faced disillusionment and panic, but her determination led her to seek truth, choose forgiveness, and ultimately build a stronger future for her family. Meanwhile, Lucinda and Alastair's ruthless ambitions brought them swift, merciless karma, proving that ill-gotten power rarely stands the test of time. If you've been captivated by this tale of secrets and second chances, show your support. Please hit that like button below, share the video with friends craving a juicy drama, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll never miss any of our riveting stories packed with lessons, hope, and a dash of sweet, well-deserved revenge. Thanks for watching.